Now back to your regularly scheduled format. Israel is our greatest ally, so it's confounding to some why the Obama administration would decided on Friday to abstain from a UN Security Council vote to condemn Israel for its settlements on the West Bank and especially in East Jerusalem. Now, Israel thinks the White House actually orchestrated the vote and says it has evidence. For example,
well, we have rather ironclad information from sources in both the Arab world and internationally that this was a deliberate push by the United States, and in fact they helped create the resolution in the first place.
And what is outrageous is that the United States was actually behind that gang up. I think it was a very sad day and really a shameful chapter.
And that was just the beginning of the outrage. It has not stopped. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is, of course, very upset.
As I told John Kerry on Thursday, friends don't take friends to the Security Council.
Well, undeterred by the defeat of the United Nations, Israel says it will move ahead with thousands of new homes in East Jerusalem, finishing up with 600 en route to 5,000, and warned the nations against further action directly and indirectly. Meanwhile, President-elect Donald Trump tore into the UN following the resolution, the only way he knows how when he's on vacation, through the Twitter machine. The United Nations has such great potential, but right now it is just a club for people to get together and talk and have a good time. Sad. Charles Krauthammer calls the world body a disaster and suggests Mr. Trump, the president-elect, try to find a way to get rid of it.
We're paying an organization that spends half its time, more than half its time, and energy and resources and bureaucracy trying to attack the only Jewish state on the planet, a tiny little speck, while genocide, mayhem, murder, terrorism is going on all over the world. It is an organization that exacerbates tensions. It does not assuage them. I think that's good real estate in downtown New York City, and Trump ought to find a way to put his name on it and turn it into condos.
Wow, what a very direct comments from Charles Krauthammer. He comes from a man who understands what the potential is real estate-wise. There's been 20 condemning resolutions against Israel. One against Syria, who has killed at least 400,000 people, and 1 million said I better leave, and one against Russia, who is carving up the Ukraine. Right before that, they carved up Russia. Excuse me, they carved up Georgia. What about this organization? How can they exist this tilted against one small nation?
It's one of those institutions, like so many that we see anywhere in politics, that started out with great intentions and good ideas, and like you said, a place where people can come together. You need a place to go and talk. But then after a while, the special interests take over. It just gets mired in corruption. There are all these negative externalities to what they're doing. I'm not sure it makes sense to keep going. And you have to, I mean, this is part of what the Trump phenomenon is about, is rather than just blindly accepting something that's there because, oh, we have to have it because this is where you go talk, you have to be able to really look and reevaluate your commitment to these institutions, and you have to have the walk away ready. I mean, you talk about we can't just leave, we can't just not be a part of this. If the other side doesn't believe that you're willing to stand up and walk away, you're not actually negotiating. So, you know, we have to act like, does this really make sense? Is there a better way to do it?
Absolutely. Now let's look at this resolution in particular. What does U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer have in common with Senator Gillibrand, have in common with Congressman Elliot Engel, have in common with Congresswoman Anita Lowry? They're all Democrats and all condemned.
They're all from New York.
And they all condemned, and I could have listed 20 others. He took the top 4, all condemned this resolution from their party's president. What does President Obama gain from this isolated action?
Well, first of all, I think President Obama did this after years of, and I'm not defending it, but after years of frustration with Bibi Netanyahu, and also after years of frustration.
They just don't like each other.
After increased settlements in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem, which is, by the way, something that Republican and Democratic administrations alike condemned, including Ronald Reagan.
But as you know, for decades, we have stood by them and would never abstain from a UN
Well, we
resolution.
actually have. But I will also say this. The problem with the UN, and I think, Melissa, you pointed this out so well, and Brian, you did in your intro, is the United Nations has to come to grips with the fact that they turn a complete blind eye to the savagery, and I mean savagery, among some of the people that voted for this resolution. Venezuela, Russia, China are some of the biggest human rights abusers in the world. And for them to stand in judgment on the only democracy in the Middle East is abhorrent. And to be lectured by the likes of Venezuela and Vladimir Putin and the Chinese is insane. So I would say to the UN, get your own, especially to the members of the Security Council, get your own house in order. I understand.
Well, fine, but actually address the president. What is President Obama doing here?
This is an opinion show. This is my opinion. I think President Obama is no friend to Israel. I also think President Obama, on his way out, is settling a score, which you point out, that he has with Bibi Netanyahu. I mean, if you remember the whole thing when Netanyahu came and he spoke to Congress, President Obama didn't show up. We remember that whole issue, and they've had the contentious relationship. But the most important thing that the president should do is whatever he does, whatever he acts upon, should be in the best interest of peace. My problem with this is abstaining isn't in the best interest of peace. It emboldens the anti-Israel crowd, emboldens the pro-Palestinian crowd, and it creates more tension in the region. One more thing. And the other part of this is the numbers, the UN, we spend $8 billion. There's $3 billion that we put towards the budget. We spend $8 billion on UN initiatives. $8 billion. Cut it in half.
At least take away that parking. Go ahead, Kennedy. What do you think about this? I don't see any upside. I think the blowback has even surprised the president. Am I wrong?
And it's sad that this is the legacy that these two men leave behind. And abstaining is the same as voting yes. They are permanent members of the Security Council, and the United States absolutely could have voted this resolution down. So what does it mean? What is the UN going to do going forward? And somehow, I just get really sickened by the moral relativism we see in the Middle East. That bad is really bad, but only for a few people, and they put Israel at the top of the list. But you look at the actors, at the groups and the states surrounding Israel who really just want to wipe the place off the map. You look at Hamas alone, that is not a charitable organization. I don't care what Nancy Pelosi says.
Well, can I just throw in here very quickly? Venezuela brought this, right? Venezuela brought the resolution?
No.
Along with Venezuela, Senegal, and New Zealand.
Right. In Venezuela, do you think this is what they're really thinking about in Venezuela right now? Let's figure out what's going on in the Middle East, and let's push back on Israeli settlements in the West Bank.
Eric, it was a push by Egypt. They backed off when Donald Trump asked them to, and then they came back with this on Friday. Merry Christmas, everybody. Meanwhile, let me tell you.